So in this video we're going to go through the setting up of our V1 and V2 Brown's gas machines, and in this video we're actually going to demonstrate mainly using this model. The V1 and the V2 are essentially the same. They just have a slightly different way of filling up the tanks at the bottom. So this has two little kind of beakers, and the other model has a little panel here which you can pull out, and in the top you can fill up the water in a slightly different way. But essentially there's two tanks regardless of which machine that you're using, and the screen is exactly the same in terms of the display. It's just arranged in a slightly different way. So I've turned the machine around just to show you that the power cable plugs into the back here, and there's an on-off switch. So I'm not going to switch it on right now because I want to turn the machine around before I do that. But this is your water outlet here, and I'll be showing you a bit later how you use that just to empty the machine if you need to. So there's nothing difficult about it. You just unscrew it and then the water can drain out. And up here you can see there's a little, this is where we put the water into the tank. So we just twist the black bit to take that off. So just pointing out some of the places that we'll be going to a bit later on. Now, when the machine arrives, it's going to arrive with the water tank empty. So if I was to actually switch the power on at the back with that on-off switch, the machine would light up on the screen and it would start to bleep quite loudly, continuously, and indicate on here that it was needing to be filled up with water. So if I show you that, so there's a little error message, and you can see a little triangle is lit up next to low water. And so that will keep bleeping until you fill the water up. So what we're going to do next is fill the water up, and then when we switch the machine back on, hopefully that bleeping won't occur. So I've turned the machine onto its side, so you can see here we have the indicator where we can see how much water is in the machine, and the water goes into, or is filled up through this bit here. So we turn the black bit and we keep doing that until it comes off completely. And you'll see on the top there's a little cap, and that cap you can take off, and that cap is only there for transport. It makes it so that the container is completely sealed in terms of air and anything getting in there. So that can be put somewhere safe, but you don't actually need that. So once it's taken off, unless you're transporting it, you're okay just to, even if you throw it away, you don't really need it. So I'm going to put that just there for a moment. Now, before we add water, it's really important to point out that you should only put distilled water into these machines. Now, you can use deionized water, which you can buy in garages, but whatever the water that you get, it's a good idea to test it before you put it in. So it's our suggestion that you buy a TDS meter like this one, and there's lots of other different designs, but they look very similar to this. And TDS stands for Total Dissolved Solids. And the way you do that is, I've got some distilled water, I've put some into the jug, and I'm just going to show you how we test it. So on here, press the on button. I select, because it's got two modes on it, I select TDS. There it is. And then I put it into the water, give it a little stir, and just see what comes up. Now at the moment, that's coming up at 3 to 4. So that water isn't great, but it would still be okay to run the machine with. So generally speaking, when you buy water from the internet, say from Amazon, there's lots of different places where you can order distilled water. And some of them will have a reading of 0 parts per million. That is the ideal. Not all distilled water will be 0, And generally you'll find that the water, if it's distilled and it's genuine distilled water, should be anywhere between 0 and maybe 3 or 4 parts per million. And these machines will run with distilled water which is less than 5 parts per million. So this water here would be okay. Now the reason this water is a little bit contaminated is because I've actually poured it in and out of several machines, and originally this water was 0, but just the process of transporting it backwards and forwards to different machines has actually gradually picked up contamination from the different containers that it's been poured into and then out of again. So I'm going to use this water anyway because it is good enough to use for the machine. But if for any reason the water that you bought wasn't good enough and you didn't have a pen to test it with, the machine actually has its own built-in water purity meter, a TDS meter of its own. So it won't give you a reading, but it will actually indicate and actually stop the machine and give you an error message if the water isn't clean enough. And then it gives you the opportunity to empty the water and put better water in. It just means that you can't run the machine and actually damage it, as used to be the case with some of the earlier models of hydrogen and Brown's gas machines that were on the market. So some of the worst case scenarios of distilled water that we found are where they've had a parts per million of anywhere in the range of 50 or more, and in some cases have had, if you ever do a reading with just normal tap water, we've had readings which were basically the same as tap water. So some companies aren't actually genuine. They're actually just filling up bottles of tap water and then selling it as distilled water. So the good thing is the machine will let you know if the water is not too good. But the reason why it's good to have a pen is that one of these meters is you will extend the lifespan of your machine if you put only 0 parts per million in terms of the TDS reading of quality of water into your machine. So it's really worth kind of finding somewhere which has got really good quality water, or even buying your own distiller and making your own, and then just making sure that you can test it before you put it in. So I've continued to add water, and so you can probably see that we're much higher up. And as a general guide for filling the machine up, I would say that always make sure that however much you put into the machine, you always can see just a little bit of space, even if it's just a fraction. You could go higher than this. This is certainly enough for the machine to operate. But yeah, just make sure there's a little bit of a gap, even if it's just very small. And this just means that you won't have overfilled the machine. So if I switch the machine on at the back, that will actually make it a little bit easier to see. So that bleep indicates that the machine is on. So it just makes it, yes, a little bit easier to see. And then if we turn the machine around, we can have a look at the display. So for the next step in setting up, we put a bit of water into these little cups or beakers. If you've got the other model, what you'll notice is that at the very, very bottom of this little panel that you've got will be a little clear space, and it will say maximum. And essentially you can pull the front piece off, and you'll see at the very top 2 little things that you can open to put the water in, and you just fill it up to that maximum line, which is actually very, very low. Most of the container will be empty. For this one, we just take the cup, detach it and take it out, and then unscrew, and then we fill it up. There's a minimum and maximum, and you fill it. Doesn't matter whether it's right to the top or towards the bottom. Just put enough water in, which I'll do now, which is that. Screw it back on, and then attach it back in. So it's as simple as that, and you do that with both of them. So just to summarize what we've done so far. So we plugged the machine in. If we had switched it on with the tank empty, it would just continue to bleep. So we switched the machine off, and then on the back of the machine, we were able to unscrew that black kind of cap to the water tank, and then we filled it up with water, looking at the indicator on the side, and we fill it up, but just making sure that there's at least a little bit of space in the tank. If you overfill it, then the machine will tell you and you'll need to drain a bit of water out. And if the machine hasn't got enough water, then it won't work either. So the machine will let you know either way. Now, we've then turned the machine to look at the front, and you have this model, you have the little water cups to fill up. And if you have the other model, you just pull the little container out. Look at the top bit, there'll be two little bits that you can take the stoppers out, and you can fill the tanks up on both sides with distilled water. So it's the same water that you put into the main tank. But on the other model, the indicator for where the maximum is on the front. You look on the front, very much right down at the very bottom, you'll see a little bit that says maximum. So with both of this and the other model, don't fill it beyond maximum. If you overfill it, it just doesn't produce the Brown's gas, and so the machine will look as if it's running, but nothing will actually be happening. So then we're ready to look at the screen, and if I press this on button, we get the display come up. So where it says timer, we have 5 hours come up, and if we go to the time, we can change that to different times. I'll leave it on 2 hours. And if we want to change the output, we can go to gas, and we can take it from the maximum of 900 milliliters per minute to different settings using the gas. So maybe 300 is what you want. In fact, let's put it back on 900. And if you're going to be using this at night and you don't want the screen and all these little lights to be on, then you can press the LED on/off button, and that will switch everything off, but the machine has to be running before that will work. So if I press that now, it's not doing anything. But if I press start, a little green light comes on in this triangle to say that it's working. And what will happen in a moment, little bubbling will occur in here. And we haven't attached anything yet. We haven't attached a cannula, but I'm going to show you that in just a moment. So at the moment I can see bubbling appearing in the two little bottles down there, which means everything is working as well. And if we were to look at the screen here, below where it says working is the indicator for low water. Underneath that it says imbalance. So this machine likes to be on a flat surface, and it will tolerate a degree of not being exactly flat, but if it tilts too much, then this will indicate. The machine will bleep and it will switch itself off as well. So it's just bringing your attention as to why the machine stopped working. And then the very bottom one says TDS. Now at the moment, the fact that that is not lit up tells us that the water quality is fine. But if that lights up in the red, it's telling you that the water quality is not pure enough. And the machine won't run until you've changed the water. Now, in the manual, they might tell you to change the water. Sometimes it depends on different machines. Sometimes they'll say change it every 5 to 7 days, sometimes up to like every 3 months. That is kind of the advice that was given for older model machines, which didn't have a built-in water quality monitor. So generally nowadays, with virtually all of the new machines, is once you've put the water into the machine and you've filled it up to the correct level, you can essentially just leave the water in the tank. And if for any reason the water did become contaminated, or the water quality just gradually became too low, then the machine would tell you, and then you can empty the tank and put new water in. Now, there's no reason why the water quality might go down. If you're using the machine regularly, it should be fine. And as you're using the machine, the water in the tank will gradually get used up. It will probably need topping up periodically, maybe depending how often you use it. So if you're using the machine for an hour a day, it might mean that you need to top it up every month or so. If you're using it for long periods of time every day, such as overnight, you might find you need to be topping it up every week. So it all depends on how often and how long you use the machine for. But if you have been leaving the machine and not using it for any length of time, it's generally regarded as a good idea to keep water in the machine, because it keeps the hydrolysis cell kind of lubricated and stops it from drying out. And the hydrolysis cell is the part of your machine that makes the hydrogen. But if you haven't used the machine for 3 months or longer, it's a good idea to then just replace the water in it when you go back and use it again. So there's no real reason to replace the water other than if it becomes contaminated, other than if you haven't used it for 3 months or longer. So we're now ready to attach the cannula. And so I have the cannula here laid out, and your machine will come with 3 cannulas, and these are a little bit different to just standard cannulas that you might find on Amazon. So if you're looking to get a replacement, go to our website and you can order them there. But these cannulas have 3 attachments. So one of them, if I show you, so the one that has this little cylinder, that one attaches to the back where you filled the machine up. So we took the cap off, and this will attach onto there. Now that cylinder is not needed to be filled up with anything. It's a water catcher. So essentially the oxygen is going to come out of that back of the machine, and with any kind of machine, particularly the more powerful machines as this is, condensation naturally will occur in the cannula. And so this is designed to help reduce condensation and catch any water droplets. And then these 2 plug into the front bit here. So we attach one into here. There we go. And then if you follow the cannula all the way to the nose piece, you'll see that there is the 2 bits that go into the nostrils, and then there's the little flap. And when you put this on, it should be that the flap points down towards the lips, and then this will wrap around the ears and it's ready to go. So we're now ready to switch it on. So if I switch it on, select a time, so it goes up to 8 hours. We'll leave it at 1 hour. You can obviously turn it off before the minimum of an hour. And then we'll keep it at 900 and press start. And if you wanted to see what night mode looks like, or the here where you can switch off the LEDs, just press it and that all switches off. And you can bring it all back on again. Now, if you want to check that this is working, you can get a glass of water, and you should see bubbling in the tank. And if you put this into here, you'll see bubbling in the water. And that's just the easiest way to check that the machine is actually working. So if you'd like to use the water stone to make some hydrogen water, you'll find in the accessories that there is a water stone, and it comes with some white tubing. And you can plug that tubing into either one of those outputs. So I'm going to plug it into that one, put that into the water, start the machine. Now, generally speaking, when the machine is on 900, all of the outputs are 300 each. So there's 300 milliliters per minute of hydrogen from each of these, and from the oxygen coming from the back, there's 300 milliliters per minute of oxygen. And if you then start to lower the power output, each of these is lowered to the same degree. So if it was a 300 output and you changed the power, then you're getting basically each of these will be the same output, but basically making up 300 milliliters per minute. of total output. So at the moment you can see there's a lovely output of hydrogen into the water. So generally, when you're looking to make hydrogen water, you just need to let that bubble away in the water for about 3 to 5 minutes. And then you want to drink it straight away. So if you had the idea that you were going to make some water and then drink it later, just be aware that the amount of hydrogen is getting lower and lower and lower by the minute. So an hour later, it might be negligible how much hydrogen is left in the water. So after 3 to 5 minutes, you can switch the machine off and then you can drink the water straight away. Now, for some recommendations on getting started. So a general place to start with, regardless of what your condition is and how healthy you are, it's a good idea to start with using the machine for about 30 minutes. So the minimum on this one is it does set it for an hour and in terms of the time, but generally speaking 30 minutes is a good duration to start with either hydrogen or Brown's gas. And if you did that every day for a week, you could assess how you feel, and if there's no detox reactions and no other reactions occurring, such as headaches, such as fatigue or flaring up of symptoms, which can sometimes happen if you're detoxing too badly and too heavily, then you can increase it up to an hour. And if you increase it by that half an hour to make an hour, then the same thing again. Do that for a week and then see how you feel, and then basically increase it gradually. So the worst thing you can do is to suddenly go in at 5 or 6 hours because you're in a hurry to heal and get the benefits, and then you start detoxing really heavily. And particularly with people who may have a health condition which has made them very weak, what you don't want to do is to overload a person with heavy detoxing who's already very weak and can't handle that detox. So start very gently, build it up, and if you find that you increase and then over that week start to feel something is making you worse, you can either go back to a duration which was better for you in terms of that worked, or you can, if it's only mild, you can kind of ride it out. But only increase it, generally speaking, when you feel that the duration that you're using is not doing you, causing any side effects for you. So at the moment now, that's been running for 3 minutes. In a moment, I'm going to stop the machine and I'll drink that water so I can get all the health benefits from it. So if you need to drain the water out, all you do is just use the drainage kind of outlet bit here. So I've just got a very small jug. This is obviously not big enough to drain the whole tank. It is a good idea to put a towel underneath, and I've just got the machine just right on the edge of a table. I can put the jug underneath. Now the pressure means that the water is going to spurt out forward, so a much bigger jug would make this a bit easier, but just to show you, so you unscrew, and there you go. So you've got the water coming out, and you can drain the tank out. And if you need to stop before, this is where having a towel is a good thing, because then when you put the cap back on, you don't get too much kind of water going everywhere. But that's how you basically drain the tank.